welcome to the Nothing to Prove, Only to Share podcast.
Thank you.
This is Adam Meckler.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give us like a little intro and tell us about yourself and like what you're currently working on?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Adam.
Hey.
I grew up playing music. Started on guitar when I was 8, and I sing a lot. I still play guitar. I still write songs. But people know me primarily as a trumpet player. Started playing trumpet when I was 10, and did a couple degrees in music. I did a jazz studies degree at Lawrence University, and then I did a trumpet degree at University of Minnesota.
Okay.
And then I was here 10 years and just playing full time and teaching a little bit, but mostly just playing and touring and recording and writing and making music and doing commissions. And so I compose a lot of music. So I write songs in the like singer-songwriter sense, and I also write like full-fledged compositions for mostly for 18-piece big band, like a jazz-esque big band, which doesn't sound like, when you say that, people think like Glenn Miller and like these really old like 40s dance band kind of things, and like that's totally not, like this is not your grandma's jazz.
Okay.
So it's just like it's infused with like modern influences, R&B, soul, pop, and we've done collaborations with hip hop artists and soul singers on our last couple of albums.
Very cool.
And I'm working on a new record right now where I'm like repurposing all this stuff we've recorded with my 18-piece orchestra and having these really cool producers sample it and turn it into beats and other kinds of songs.
Sweet.
And then collaborating with hip hop artists and singers and other horn players and having people record on my stuff. So yeah, that's like super boiled down. I'm also like an entrepreneur, and I created an app, and like I do all this other stuff too. And I'm a university professor now, which is new as of 4 years ago.
Okay.
And never really saw myself as an academic, so to speak. But I got tenure this last year, and so like I'm in that academic game a little bit. But still very much identify as an artist, and am really pushing that stuff all the time.
Awesome. Busy guy.
Busy.
So I thought that you had gone to McNally, or did you teach at McNally?
I taught there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I didn't go there, but I started teaching there in 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
Until it closed.
Okay, you were there until it closed.
In 2017. So I was there. I was entering. So it must have been like 2013 or something. I was there. I was starting my 5th year. I was like in my 5th year when it closed, and that was really my first experience with doing like classroom teaching, where I was teaching music theory and keyboard skills and that kind of stuff. And I taught trumpet lessons, and I ran the fusion ensemble, which is like the most killing players at McNally. We're in that band every year. And so I got to take, I did a tour with one of those bands around the West Coast. And then I did one tour around Chicago area with one of those bands. And so it was just a great experience teaching there. I thought that was a really unique place in a good way in terms of how we train musicians for the industry. And it was just a huge bummer when the whole thing tanked. That's been coming up a lot lately. A lot of our guests have been students there or taught there. Yeah. We just had Jason McGlone on. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he went there, right?
Yes.
And he's like engineering everything I do. Like almost everything. Yeah. I mean, he's like such a wizard.
Oh, that's sweet.
So he's working on a track for my wife, which I'm playing on and helping produce. And he's the one that's working on this new record I'm working on with my orchestra that's going to be called Sampled.
Cool.
And so I'm going to be back in a couple weeks, and I'll do 2 days in the studio with Jason.
Cool. Okay, cool. I didn't know that you guys were working together. That's sick.
Yeah, and he did all the Nookie Jones stuff, and he did tons of stuff I've been on.
Oh shit, I love that. It seems like he's working on everybody's projects.
He's the dude. I mean, really, like everybody. Stokely, he's working on Stokely stuff, and like all the like heavy classical stuff too, like Charles Lazarus stuff, Chuck Lazarus, who plays with Minnesota Orchestra and does his own like pops kind of thing. Jason's like the guy for everybody.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So when you got out of school, because like you're so busy, how did you get so busy, and how did you make a career in music? Like when you first got out of school, did you jump right in, or did you have to work other jobs, or what?
I worked nights at UPS for about 4 months into like, I graduated in 2007, and then we decided to live in Green Bay for a year because my wife got this band director job in Green Bay. and we had been dating during college, and then we got married like right after I graduated. And so it was like, okay, I guess we'll be in Green Bay for a year. I worked at a bank for a little while. It was awful. It was a nightmare. And eventually got fired because I just hated being there. And stupid. If you do transactions of more than $600, you have to put in a code. And I had seen, and I kept having to call the manager over, and I thought it was annoying. And I had seen what code she used, so I just typed it in once, and then they fired me. Yeah, which like whatever. It's like they knew I was gonna leave anyway soon.
Yeah.
We had been doing summers in Door County where we were just playing 4 or 5 nights a week. We started playing with my wife's group. My wife's a vocalist. She was on American Idol in season 10 and like went to Hollywood and all that stuff.
Sweet.
And so we've been making music together since 2003. And when this was like 2006, 2007, we were like playing all over the Fox Valley area because I was going to school in Wisconsin. And then we were going up to Door County in the summers, and we'd play like 5 nights a week, 4 nights a week, some weeks, and good bread, and like everywhere we played they'd give us food and drink, and we were young, and it was just like money was flowing. And so I'd like work at restaurants sometimes and serve, and I'd like play poker at night sometimes when I wasn't playing gigs. This is like young people life. But we moved to Minneapolis in 2008, like right in the middle of the Great Recession, which was brutal. So I had collected all these antique trumpets and like amps and guitars, and I sold everything just so we could make rent the first couple of weeks. And that's when I was like, all right, I should get a job. And so I started working at UPS here in Minneapolis. I did that 4 or 5 months. I would go out to like the Clown Lounge or the Artist Quarter or like clubs. I would just try to go out every night and hear music. And then right after I was done hearing music, I'd go straight to work. And then I'd work from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I'd come home and they were like doing construction outside my window, and be like,
oh my God.
And I'd be like trying to sleep through that shit, which wasn't great. But yeah, like I was going out every night. That's really like how you get connected in a scene. You go out, you hear other people, you hang out until the end of the show, you talk to bands, you go see the bands that like make the music you want to make, right? And then you can connect with those people, and at the very least, like maybe you can do some opening sets, or like maybe those people will play in your band, it doesn't matter what genre you're playing. It's like, that's the model, really. So that's what I did. Like every night I went out, and then I started to create my own opportunities. I just went like, I want to play, like I had written all this music while we were in Green Bay, and I was like, I want to play this music with a band. And so I was going out to shows, I was meeting players, and one guy in particular was like, do you have any music, man? I'd play with you. And I was like, oh, really? You would? Sick, And so like he helped me form a band. He helped me book my first couple of gigs. I got somebody who was like connected in the scene. He now runs Shifting Paradigm Records, which is a record label here in town. Zach Harris.
Zach Harris, I know Zach. Yeah, he was a teacher of mine at Hamlin.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So Zach was a dude who like,
oh my God.
He's like, I would play with you, like, why don't you, I love playing with trumpet players. I remember him saying that.
Shut up.
And
I love that.
Yeah. And so like I started getting connected. We played the Dakota in downtown Minneapolis was doing these like late night shows. They were doing like a 10 a.m. to 1 or 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. kind of jam. Like after the headliner played, then like a local late night at the Dakota thing would do it. And so we started doing those gigs, and those were going well, and I was able to get a bunch of people out. And so my name started to spread, and like there was like one other trumpet guy in town who was like making original music and like doing his own thing and really pushing his thing. And he moved to Arizona the first year I was here. And so an article came out that was like, Adam Meckler assumes the trumpet chair. And I was like, holy shit. Like right away, I was just connected, And I did have a certain amount of vision, and like I was writing music, and I was really trying to do the thing right. As a musician, as an artist, as a technician on the instrument, I was very much developing still, and it was like those years were really crucial for me. And I made some records. It's interesting. Like I made these records in like 2008, 2009 that I took down from streaming because I was like, I don't like how I sound anymore. You know what I mean? But that's really like, that's a timestamp of development that I think is really cool to hear. And my students like those tunes. So like my students would be like, why isn't that on streaming? So I put a bunch of that stuff back up on streaming recently just to be like, all right, here it is. So I did this record called Four Dags. My dad passed in 2009, and I wrote all this music about it. And it's like, the compositions are good, and my trumpet playing is good too. It's like, whatever. I went to school, I got 2 degrees. It was like, I was learning, I was practicing tons. Like I was obsessed. But when I hear it now, I'm like, oh, But that's just it. That's part of the journey of being a musician. Is like,
Totally.
you're time stamping these different areas of development in your life, and it's okay, man. It's okay to go like, that was then and this is now.
Right. I think that we all struggle with that when it comes to releasing, and when it comes to like, I have some friends right now that are recording, like they're going to put out a record and they've done like half of it already. So, and that was like months ago.
Yeah.
And they hate how it sounds now, because they're so much better now. But I think that I said that exact word, timestamp. I was like, it is what it is. Like, It's cool that you've grown so much and that you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's still good music. Yeah. But no, I think even with my own stuff, for me, I think it's like I am less inclined to push it out if I sit on it too long because of that exact reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep seeing memes that are like, finish that track and release it.
Yeah, like just drop it. Just get it out of your face. Get it out.
I call that, well, I guess I read this in a book by a guy who went to McNally. Graham Barton wrote this book called Tracks That Sink, and he calls that the perfection trap. It's like, don't get stuck in the perfection trap. It's like artists, I think we constantly, we can get in our own heads about it too. And
totally.
It's like, just accept it and release it. And you don't know who's going to connect with something.
Totally.
Who's going to be like, wow, that really helped me get through this time, or that really changed me, or this has been really influential on me. I've had a lot of people say that about records, and I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't like that album anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, what you think about your own stuff almost is like irrelevant. I mean, you want to make the things you want to make, of course.
Want to be proud of it, yeah.
But yeah, that's it's part of the journey. It's part of the jam. Keep going. That's the big thing, is like, if you don't stop, like the people that stay, this is what I was telling my students for a long time too, like the people that stay in the game the longest are the ones who win, quote unquote. It's like, just don't stop. Keep going, and like it's the same if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to start a business. It's like, just don't die.
Totally.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
And I've tried to live by that mantra for sure. Like, I want to just keep charging ahead. And you don't have to like drive yourself insane either. It's like, take a break if you need a break, take some time, give yourself some space, be kind to yourself. All that stuff is really important. But it's, it's like, for me, I got to drive ahead. I just have to keep plowing ahead. And that's probably part of my personality. It's like growing up with, my dad was an entrepreneur. And so like, I grew up watching him start his own business and struggle. And it's like you begin to appreciate the kind of work that goes into making a career that's successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever taken a break?
I mean, not really. Like, yes, in small stints where it's like, it's like, even if it's, I feel like this can be interpreted a lot of different ways. Like, if I'm in the middle of a really heavy practice session and I start getting steamed because I'm unable to play something, it's like, I gotta take a breath. I'm gonna put my horn down. I'm gonna leave the room I'm in. I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna get a drink of water. I'm gonna clear my head, and then I'm gonna come back and keep working on it. So there's that level of take a break, and then there's another level of take a break, which is like, today I'm gonna go for a really long walk, and I'm gonna observe the world, or I'm gonna go out with some friends for a weekend, or I'm gonna go out with my family somewhere for a week. For me, it's like, I don't go out with my friends for a weekend, but I go out with my family for a weekend. And I'll bring my horn. I'll still practice. Trumpet will punish you if you take too many days off. If you take a day off. Like, there's this really famous trumpet player, Doc Severinsen, who said, if you take one day off, you notice. If you take 2 days off, your band notices. And if you take 3 days off, everybody notices.
Damn.
That's trumpet. Yeah. Really. So it's like, there's a certain level of discipline that it takes just to play that instrument, which is partly why I hate it and partly why I love it.
Yeah. For sure.
Like guitar, bass, drums. I play all those instruments a lot, but I can take a week or two off of drums and sound pretty much the same. Same with bass.
Yeah.
Guitar is a little, if I was playing upright bass, that would punish me the way trumpet does.
Sure.
But, electric bass, it's like, I can take plenty of time off and pretty much sound the same. That probably tells you how good I am at those instruments, which is not that great. Like, I'm a lot more refined on trumpet for sure.
Of course.
But, I definitely take breaks. I haven't written any big band music in a while. That's one where I've taken a long break. And so I'm always, but like, music is always something I've wanted to do. So even if I'm done with a really long day of working on music, I'll come home and pick up my guitar and write a song. You know what I mean? It's like, when you're feeding yourself, it's like it just continues to pour out. At least that's how it is for me. It's like, if if I'm working super hard, I come home and I'm like, it would be really nice to just pick up my guitar and screw around. You know what I mean? And then explore music from this avenue that's like, there's no pressure and there's no need to be amazing. It's like, I'm just going to sit here and noodle and play, have some fun and maybe write a song, maybe write some lyrics. But being in the shit inspires me to continue. Cool. And so, yeah, you know, the composition thing, like lately I've been thinking like, oh man, I really want to write more music for my orchestra. And so I was just talking to my wife and I was like, what if I started saying no to some things for a while? Like what? Because I've been out of town now for 4 years and I've just been driving here. I've been driving to Chicago. I've been doing a ton of playing still and a ton of like little tours. And, you know, that's partly because like my ego like needs to be in front of people, like needs to be playing. Like I think I'm feeding that a little bit. Yep. And so it was a real, like to leaving this town was a bit of like it's messed with my head, you know, it's like, it was hard for me to wrap my head around like, oh, I'm not in this scene where I developed my thing for 10 years and was playing, you know, 25 shows a month with a whole bunch of different groups, including my own groups. To go from that pace to like almost nothing where we were was really tough. And so I was really like intentional about creating opportunities for myself and leaving town and going out on tours. And now I feel a bit like, what if I took some space and said no to some things for a while and just allowed myself some space to write again, you know, and like really be able to focus on the writing. And then see, you know, in a year from now, do I have enough music for another record? Do I feel like I could, you know, make something that's really meaningful? Yeah. And then if the answer is yes, and it's like, all right, let's go. Yeah. You know? Cool. But I got to give myself some space for that, I think. And
for sure.
I'm like really just now starting to accept that that's needed. Yeah.
It can be hard. I think I struggle with that too. Not just music endeavors, but like to have so many opportunities to do cool stuff. Yeah. To say no is tough.
Saying no is a skill for sure. For real. And I always admire people that are like, hey, sorry, I can't do that. I'm like, wow.
Well, good for
job.
you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just say yes to everything. But there's a period, there's a period of time where you have to though. It's like you want to take every opportunity that comes your way, and even some of them can be free. It's like it depends. I used to be like, no free gigs ever, but it's like, you know, sometimes you meet somebody in a situation like that where you're like, oh, this is gonna be the impetus for a thing that does end up feeding my artistry and also my pocketbook, which is a part of the equation. Like, how do we keep making art? It's like we have to be making some money too. Right. But yeah, like, you know, especially early in your career, it's like, just say yes, just like fall in love with saying yes. And then weed some things out, you know, it's like, you'll notice like, oh, this thing, like for me, I was freelancing with a whole bunch of groups. So I was also like, okay, I don't need to play with this band anymore because I don't really like it. You know, there's that gig triangle, right? That the gig triangle is like the money, the hang, and the music, right? Yeah. Like, and if you can check 2 of those boxes, it's a great gig. You know, it's like, it's a great hang and it's great music, but it doesn't pay really well. It's like, you do it because you're with a bunch of great musicians and the music's awesome and it's going to feed your soul, or you're going to get better for doing it. And so I did a lot of that, you know, where I was like, okay, this does check 2 of the boxes. Let's go. And then, you know, the hang is not great. The music's not great, but the bread is like really, really, really good. Sometimes you say yes to that and you're like, all right, I got to make this money. Right. But over time I was able to start saying no. Like, I was playing funeral gigs for a while. It was like right after my dad died. And I was like, this blows. Like I'm like sad, like sitting here playing these funerals. And it's like, it's nice to be a part of something like that, because New Orleans music is big in like funerals. And I play a lot of New Orleans style like brass music. And it can be a great like celebratory thing, and it's nice to like help someone process that loss, but it's also heavy, you know. Totally. So I just finally went, don't call me for these gigs anymore. I don't want to play them. And that was a really liberating moment. Yeah. I was like, this is my first time where I'm like, no more, please. Yeah. You know. Good for you. Yeah, I think a lot of us struggle with that when it comes to like, I have some buddies specifically that are in like several bands. They're working so hard. They're really grinding, and I think sometimes
Yeah, like whether it's a good hang or good music or good money, like fluctuates, like in groups too. And I think it's hard. It can be hard to stay committed to so many things at one time too.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in a band, I mean, that's like, you've decided
you're in there, yeah.
We're gonna have to eat some shit sometimes. Like that's part of being like on your first tour with a band. It's like you're gonna play some really crappy gigs.
Yeah.
But it's like you're slowly building an audience in these places, and you've all decided that the music thing that you're working on is worth investing in.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like Nookie Jones was like that. It was like all 6 of us were like, we're in this all the way. And let's see what happens. And over time, it's like we grew an audience where we were selling out shows all over the Midwest, and we were able to do big tours. And the stuff we did, you know, here in town funded these longer tours where we got out of town. And it really like, it became a thing where we all were making money, and like, you know, it felt like, wow, this ceiling is really high. Like we're going to be playing late night TV shows next year. And then COVID hit, you know, it's like we were right at this like moment where it was crushing, and COVID kind of screwed everything up. Which is what it is. I mean, it's fine, you know. Also,
side note, I hear about Nookie Jones all the time from everybody. And I work as a production runner for Live Nation. And I was working Beyonce, and one of the audio techs, like not from town, was wearing a Nookie Jones shirt.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It was cool.
Yeah, it's like the only thing I've ever done where people continually send us messages on Facebook and Instagram, and they're like, when the hell are you guys going to play again? What's going on?
Yeah.
We need you. You know, it's like
that's cool.
There are very few things where it's like there's that level of response from fans.
Yeah.
And it's just not, you know, I talk about this on my podcast, so I guess we could talk about it. But yeah, there was a bit of a falling out with one of the other guys who I started the band with, and like, he ended up like threatening to sue the band, and we had to pay him $7,000 out of our, like we had to pay him half of our liquid assets. So we had like $14,000 liquid assets in our band account, and we had a van that we had purchased, and you know, it just got ugly. It got ugly, and then we replaced him, and we kept going, and the musically it was killing, and it was better than ever, and we added some backup singers, and we were doing these tours, and it was crushing, and then we were going to go to China. Literally May of 2020, we were supposed to be in China. And then we were going to do a weekend in the studio, and like both of those things got canceled. And I really feel like if those two things had happened, we'd still be rolling. Yeah. But Cameron, the lead singer, moved to LA, and he's crushing it with his band King Perry. They're doing awesome. You know, they're doing awesome. Cool. They're working with Stone's Throw Records now, and he was on the my podcast to talk about that stuff. And I'm happy for him. And like, there's no bad blood with anybody else. It's just like there was that one guy who can remain nameless for now that just like, you know, it got ugly. And he was like one of my closest friends. It's
that's
tough.
So hard,
it's tough to go through something like that. And that's a good lesson that like define your roles when you start. And it's like, it's the worst thing to go like, let's sign a sheet that says that we're 6 equal parts, but it's like, that's what needed to happen. Yeah. And because he owned the LLC, he thought, I'm able to sue you guys because I own the LLC. So I want half your liquid assets. Here's a letter from a lawyer. And then we had to go get a lawyer, and like, it was a mess.
That's hard. Yeah. Zach Harris, I took a music business class with him.
Yep.
And I was in bands and like never even considered contracts or anything like that. But yeah, that's what happens, I suppose, when you're not like prepared far in advance.
Yeah,
for
your
like
thing might,
some kind of
your thing might blow up. You know, it's like it is possible for your thing to get big, and that's what happened with Nookie Jones. It's like we were going to do a big show at the Ordway, like that. It's like we were starting to crush, and it was like, whoa, this shit is happening for real. We played sold out show at Paisley Park. We were the first band to play Paisley Park after Prince died.
Wow,
you know, and so it was like a really cool thing that was really happening, and it felt like, man, we're going to be on Fallon. It really felt like that. We had a manager, we were rolling.
Wow.
And it so quickly fell apart, you know, because we hadn't really defined. We talked about what it was, and so there was like verbal, like, yeah, we're 6 equal parts. All of us are in this together, and you know, we're all eating shit on tours, and but yeah, whatever. Hindsight's 20/20. Now we know.
When you look back on like things falling apart like that, do you feel like it was meant to happen that way, or is there still some like?
Oh, I'm sore about it.
Bitter. Yeah. Okay.
I'm still bitter about it, and I tell people like, yo, keep your eye out when you're working with this dude, you know.
Yeah.
Because this is what happened with us, you know, and it's like, I don't know, I can't imagine myself doing something like that ever.
Yeah.
It's like I've been in this position of being a band leader for a really long time, and it's always been like, I want to pay people as much as I can. I've always been thinking about making sure that the experience of the people that are in my band, although that's a different thing. It's like, it's my, like with my stuff, it's my thing and I'm running it and I have complete control over what gets booked and what music gets played. And that's not how Nookie Jones was formed.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it was me and this guy who went like, let's start a thing. And then I was like, oh, I went to school with this guy who sings in the gospel choir. I bet he'd be great. And it was Cameron. And so I went to Cameron. I was like, do you want to do this thing? And then it was the three of us and we wrote all this music together and then we blew up and then shit got ugly. It's like, yeah, I'm sore about it, man. I was like, it's tough because like I had two projects that were like really crushing. I'm still in Youngblood Brass Band and Nookie Jones, and like Youngblood is on a hiatus for a little bit and Nookie Jones ended, and I was like, damn, now I'm like stuck in the UP and I'm not going on tours like I thought I would be. You know, I thought I'd be like up there and then I'd be gone for a couple of weeks and then I'd be up there and I'd be gone for a few weeks. And I definitely want to be back on the road, you know, playing with a great band. And I want to I want to find that thing that Nookie Jones had, you know, which was like a real high ceiling. Are
you optimistic about that? Like it'll come?
Man, that's an interesting question.
Sorry.
I don't know. Like, I'm optimistic that I'm an artist and I'm going to continue being an artist and I'm going to continue making music and I'm going to be as genuine as I can. It did make me go like, all right, I'm just going to do this shit myself. And so like I've released a bunch of singles of me like singing songs I've written. Yeah. Which I wasn't like, I was just playing trumpet in Nookie Jones, but you know, I grew up singing and writing poetry and writing songs, and I played in a band in high school and we played rock shows, you know, and it's like, I loved that thing and I kind of set it aside for a long time because I wanted to really be great at trumpet. And so like I had to really focus my energies on that and like learning the language of jazz, which is this whole language that's different than playing guitar and writing songs. And now is when I got, actually it's weird, like when I got the job to be the director of jazz studies at this university, I was feeling like I didn't like jazz and didn't want to play it. Damn. Like, because I was doing a whole bunch with Youngblood, which isn't really jazz, and I was doing a whole bunch with Nookie Jones, which isn't jazz, and I felt like I was playing with the Hornheads, and I was playing with Corey Wong, and I was like on three of Corey's records, and like I just felt like, man, I'm doing all this really cool shit that isn't the thing that I studied, and I really love it, and I want to keep doing it. And so like, yeah, I got that job, and then I went like, I actually want to write all these songs and sing and like release singles. So I still have done that. Like I've had this position, and I love, obviously like grew up loving jazz, and I still love jazz and still do it in a lot of different contexts. But I consider myself to be more of a whole artist. You know what I mean?
For
it's
sure.
Like I'm not just a person who's good at trumpet. Like that's true. And I am able to play in a lot of different contexts on the instrument, but it goes like much deeper than that. Yeah, you know,
for sure. So much of the grind is business oriented and kind of about monetization and making money. Yep. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how you make it happen?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I make money in a lot of different ways. I make money playing instruments as a gigging musician. I book my own shows, you know, I do stuff with my wife. But we also, you know, we founded a company called Gig Boss, and we raised $110,000 and built an app. That's an organizational tool for musicians, because one of the hardest parts of being a freelance musician and a band leader was keeping track of my schedule and keeping track of my finances. And so that's what the app does. You can enter all your gig information. You can link charts and recordings in the notes section. You can add stuff to your Google Calendar, and then it'll track all your money in and your money out. So it's continuing to grow. It's continuing to get better. You know, that was a thing where like I had forgotten to get paid for actually something Zach booked. It was a like an artist series thing. He won a grant to do this artist series thing, and it was during the same weekend as Jazz Fest in St. Paul, and I had played like 5 gigs that weekend, and I had boatloads of cash in my pocket. So I paid my band with cash, and then I forgot to get paid for the series. Yep. And at the end of the year, Zach called me and he was like, "Hey man, are you missing $600?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would be awesome if I was missing $600. Do you want to pay me $600?" And it turned out that I had forgotten to get paid for that gig. And because it was a grant funded series, he had to account for every dollar.
Oh, sure.
And if that's a club and I forgot to get paid, there's no way they're calling me at the end of the year like, "Hey, we owe you money."
Right.
Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. So I got lucky on that. But that was when my wife was like, "Hey, we should start a thing that helps solve this problem." And so that's what Gig Boss is. And that doesn't make any money right now. We don't charge any money for it. We raise money to make it, and we've put a whole bunch of our own money into the company. But the idea is that down the road, we're able to charge for that, and or we can sell it to another company like Yamaha or Fender or
totally. I mean, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch now. Like since we started the company, there's been a whole bunch of copycat companies that have come out. Yeah, and
no shit.
For the most part, their apps stink, and so that's okay.
Cool.
And it shows that there's need for it.
Absolutely.
You know? And I'm really proud of what we built, and it's just getting better and better. So that's an aspect of it in terms of like entrepreneurship and like thinking big picture about how can we help fund our artist careers. It's like that was one of the things. But also like I monetized my YouTube channel, which I started making educational videos, like a whole bunch of people during COVID. I had some of that before COVID too. Like I started doing that in like 2016. I've had a YouTube account since like 2007, you know, like since way back in the day. I've been posting stuff of my own bands and stuff, but I started posting educational content, and I have one particular video that's like for beginner trumpeters that has like 300,000 views on it that like just one day it was just like all of a sudden it went to 75,000 views, and then all of a sudden it went to 150,000. I was like, dang, this is cool. Like I got all these 5th grade trumpet players, you know, subscribing to my channel. But theoretically, as they get older and they need more advanced material, they can go find my other videos and like learn more advanced things. So I started making educational stuff weekly for a long time. I haven't done that in a while now, and I really should, because like that's the one place I get paid more than I make on streaming.
Of course,
you know, it's like YouTube is like a pretty good. It's like through Google AdSense or something you get paid. So I make like $150, $175 a month on that, which isn't a ton, but it's like something, you know. And when you're paying $400, $500, $600 a month in rent, and you're sharing a room with somebody, it's like that can be a really valuable chunk of change.
Yeah.
And even for me, like I got 2 kids and a wife, and it's like I have this full-time job, and I still rely on that kind of income.
Totally.
And then like I've had songs synced in commercials.
Really?
Some stuff by my orchestra, some stuff by Nookie Jones, and I'm talking with some people over at Marmoset Music right now about getting some of my songs in their library. And so that's a long-term game too of like, can the things that you're making become assets that make you money over time? And that's the thing that I like to think about is like, you know, we're creating these things that it's like such a, like when you start talking about business, you start using business language, it starts to get, it can feel pukey, and I understand that, but like you're creating something that you can exploit, right? You have this music now that can be used in as functional music, in addition to being music that you've made to like fulfill some kind of artistic need, and to reach people. You know, it's like it can also be used in sync, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be preparing your tracks for sync and trying to build relationships with publishing houses so that you can actually get paid. So like Nookie Jones is a perfect example. Like we're making this great music, and we're like, hey, this is probably used in sync, and then we got our song, put it in this Chrysler commercial, and we got like $14,000 for 17 seconds, or not even. It was like 7 seconds of music probably, and it was just the horn stuff that I wrote, which was fun. Jamie Foxx was in the commercial, so it was like a fun. It was like, oh, sick, we got a chunk of change, you know, and then we could put some in the band account, and we could pay ourselves a nice chunk, and it was like, hey, this could be a way for us to really make some money. And so like, you know, I think about that, but I also like, I told you I compose music, and I compose music for the big band setting, and I compose music that doesn't sound like traditional big band. And so like young people that run music programs at high schools like my music and like to buy it. And so I sell that stuff through my website, and I do some hundreds of dollars of sales every month that helps it's like, I view it kind of all as like, it all feeds the same thing.
Yeah,
it's like
totally.
I get a few $100 from here every month, a couple $100 from here every month, and it adds up to this like nice chunk that you can pay yourself. And then like, you know, we started an Airbnb in our house, and like, cool. Honestly, like that's been the biggest, it's been Genius, like the biggest game changer of all. And you have to get to a place where you can own a house to do that. But, I mean, like really, I spent a couple of years remodeling our basement and turning it into like a unit where people can type in a code and get in through the garage. And now it's like this seamless thing. And we make more than $1,000 a month on it. So we make more than our mortgage costs. So our house is now, if you're like a money person, you think about liabilities and assets, and like liabilities cost you money and assets make you money, right? And our house has turned from a liability to an asset. We make money on our house now.
That's so cool.
And that's a big, like, as a musician, I feel like it's difficult to make a living depending on your lifestyle. It's difficult to make a living without some kind of income that's residual. Some kind of income that's coming in regularly that you don't have to. When you're a freelancer and when you're a musician, it's often like you're not making $1 unless you're working. Right? It's like every minute counts. And if you're not working, you're losing money. And I was in that space for so long. And that's why I had to say no to like attending my friend's wedding on 4th of July. You know, it's like he booked his wedding on the 4th of July. And I was like, dude, I make $1,000 every 4th of July. I cannot come to your wedding. Like, and that was a tough thing. Like I missed a lot of weddings. I missed a lot of family reunions because I was gigging all the time. And if I wasn't gigging, I was losing money. And that's a tough place to put yourself in. That's being self-employed for sure. But it's not really owning a business. When you own a business, the thing can make you money when you're not actively working on it, right? And so that's what we want to think about when we're building a music career, is like, how can we have money coming in that isn't me like actively making that money happen every minute, right? So my YouTube channel is a good example. Is like, I make some money on that every month, and I haven't released any videos on the channel in like 4 or 5 months. You know, I have... Yeah, it's like I started this podcast too, How Musicians Make It, which is more on the music business stuff. But I talk to artists, and I just like Whistler Isaiah is going to be on the show. He's the drummer for Hippocampus.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
He's going to be on the show on Monday. And, you know, we talked about how Hippocampus got their thing started, but also we talked about like performance anxiety and all these other things. But in my mind, like big picture, you know, the podcast can help make us money someday too. Like, and that could be that it funnels people to our app, Gig Boss. It could be that maybe someday we offer something that people can purchase, which we don't yet. And it's not really, like, for me, it's not about that. Like, I started the thing because I really just genuinely love this thing and I want to learn more. And I want to talk to people who know what they're doing, who are making it in the industry, and be like, how are you doing it? You know? And so I've learned a ton in 60 episodes, and I don't foresee that slowing down. But yeah, like thinking like a business person, thinking like an entrepreneur, I think it's difficult for artists, but it's also necessary. Yeah, you know,
definitely. The reason I know who you are is because of your podcast, actually. Like that's
nice.
And I used to work at a pottery studio where I would just like make stuff with my hands all day. And so it was always music or podcast.
Cool.
And there was a good chunk of time where I spent my whole shift listening to episodes of your podcast.
Awesome.
And it was such a good, like, at the time of my life, I was very much like trying to pursue music and like writing, and I would get off of work and I would feel like so inspired and good and warm inside. And so like, I think for me, like, I hope that people listening also get something like that from this. Like, I think that can be enough for now.
That's awesome.
That it's impacting people in a positive way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have friends too. Bob DeLage specifically is a big fan as well.
Oh, cool.
And listens a lot. And we talk about it a lot. Like it's sparking conversation between us and like motivating us and educating us too, which is super cool and super great.
Yeah. And that's the idea, really, is like, you know, part of the thing too is like I got this job at this university and I started teaching like running a jazz program, but I don't have any music majors. It's like I work at Michigan Tech University where my students are engineering majors and computer science majors, and there isn't even a performance music major there.
Wow.
You know, so it's a big program and there are lots of groups and it's growing and my students are hungry and they love it and they do it. But what I know about the music business, I can't really give them, you know? And so that was the other thing was like,
totally.
I have all this stuff in my head from the last, you know, like when I had just moved to the UP, I thought like, man, I've got all this stuff in my head from the last 10 years. I want to tell
Share
people,
it, yeah.
you know, and a big part of that too is like the ASCAP BMI thing. It's like, you know, getting performance royalties for music that you're performing. Like tonight, my orchestra's playing at Crooners, and that's a big venue. And we're going to, you know, we're going to have, I don't know how many tickets we've pre-sold, maybe 100 tickets. And I think the outdoor seats like 180. But you know, that is a situation where we're playing all my original music. All of it's registered with ASCAP. So I can go to ASCAP and I can go, here's the set list that we played. And now ASCAP will pay me performance royalties because Crooners pays ASCAP a fee to be able to play music that's registered with them. And so that's performance royalties. And that's something that in my 2 degrees in music, which if you listen to podcasts, you know, I've said this before, they didn't teach me. They didn't teach me that. And had I gone to McNally, maybe I would have learned that because McNally was a lot more thinking about the music business aspect. But just that idea of like, I may not make a ton of money on the show, but I will get paid a second time. It's like, I never knew that. And I've played so many mid to large size venues with my own music. It's like I could have been, and same with Nookie Jones. It's like I could have been submitting those set lists and making extra money. Yeah. And I wasn't. And so I left thousands, I'm sure, of dollars on the table, just because I didn't know. So like me, like telling people, I'm like, please do this thing that can make you a little bit more money and can maybe soften the blow of like, or like help sustain you, you know?
Totally. I'm so fascinated by the business side of all of it. And I was at Hamlin. Yeah. And shout out to Zach Harris and Jeff Bailey. Yeah. Like Jeff they are changing the game. Like everything I know and everything that's sparked me to like go out and find more information came from the way that they're shaping that program over there. And like they're doing a great job of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jeff's awesome. Yeah, Jeff's awesome. I'm working with him. I was in a rehearsal with him for 4 hours yesterday, and I'll be in another one with him today for 4 hours. So he's just a great guy and really understands the industry and knows a lot of people that have like done huge things in the industry. And he's an amazing producer too. Totally. But yeah, I know like he talks a lot about the struggle of like really trying to change what Hamlin's doing, and that's true in academia. I think overall is like. There needs to be a seismic shift in what we teach because the industry has changed so much and
absolutely.
The real reality of what your career is going to be like as a musician is so different than it was, 50 years ago that it's like we can't use the same it's not all about craft. It's not only about being great at your instrument. There's a lot more to it than that. So yeah, I think Jeff's doing great things, and that's one of the great things about working at a university like Michigan Tech is that like I can do whatever I want. Yeah, so I can teach those students. It's like there's nobody over my head going like they have to learn this because they're music majors. I'm just like I'm gonna teach them music the way I should have learned music. You know what I mean?
Good for you.
And so a lot of them are like leaving Michigan Tech and they're working engineering jobs or computer science jobs, and they're playing professionally in bands. And that's a really fun thing to see. Yeah. Because a lot of the people I played with professionally here in town when I was here were also day jobbers. And so there's no reason why you can't hold a job and like slowly phase it out. There's no reason why you can't have a job that feeds your family and then that gives you the artistic space and mental space and clarity to be able to write music and make great art. There's no one cookie cutter way to make a career in music. Yep. Charles Ives, one of the most famous classical composers in history, was like an insurance salesman his whole career, and he's like a massively famous avant-garde who he famously said, beauty is too often confused with music that lets your ears sit back in an easy chair. And it's a great quote. It's like music can be fucked up and really be beautiful too. Yeah. So yeah, Jeff's doing great things and academia is slowly catching on to what Jeff's trying to do over at Hamlin and Zach.
Cool. We only have a few minutes left, but
sure.
The question that I ask every guest is, how do you define success?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in the history, I've always said, like, success is, am I able to survive? Am I able to pay all my bills? That's success. Mm-hmm. You may not be the person who owns the boat, but you could be the person who like brings the 6-pack to the boat that your friend owns. You know what I mean?
Well said. Yeah.
That's kind of how I always viewed it. And when I would go into schools, it's like, while we were living here, I was playing full time, and I felt like I'm successful because I have, I own a house. It was not because of what I was doing. My wife was a band director, so we were able to use her income to buy the house. But she's a band director. She wasn't making a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And then she quit that job because she wanted to be home with the boys. And so then I supported the family on full-time freelance income for a couple of years, which I felt really proud of and I talked a lot about. And, but that also meant, I was playing 35 shows in a month sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there was one month in particular, I remember it was like July and I played 35 shows, and then August 8th is my birthday. And so like,
when August, my birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Get out of town. Coming up. Happy birthday.
Yeah, you too.
So get to my birthday and I was broke again. And I was like, how did I just play 35 shows in the month of July and I still have no money right now? But also there was this really fulfilling feeling of like, it's like I'm making it because I'm able to pay all of my bills with the music that I'm making. And that's a beautiful thing. And so, it's everything. It's all of these things like we've been talking about that came together in order to make, it's like sheet music sales of my compositions, commissions, guest artist gigs, freelance gigs, band leader gigs, my YouTube channel. It's like all these things, streaming revenue, which is like, if you combine YouTube and streaming, it's a little more palatable. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like all those things kind of combine to go like, all right, I'm able to make my bills. I'm successful. This is what success looks like.
Yeah.
And you may have to reframe like what you imagine your lifestyle looks like.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's part of it is like, how do you want to live? And if you want to live bigger, then you got to find some other avenue where you're going to make more money. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason why these things can't just continue to grow too.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was all about like piecing together something that could sustain me and then I could grow from there. And so that's where we're at. It's like, we're trying to build this app company. It's like, hey, maybe that becomes the catalyst for now I'm making money on this thing so I can fund these other things that I want to do artistically.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Great answer.
Yeah. Who knows? What does success look like?
Okay, cool. I think that's all. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got nothing.